Hello, this is Grant Stockmeyer. I hope everyone is doing well today. As you know, through reading my executive summary, today I'll be discussing President Woodrow Wilson and his quest to have the Treaty of Versailles and the League Covenant ratified through the United States Senate in 1919. The central claim of my research paper will be looking at President Woodrow Wilson as he was the greatest advocate for the League of Nations. He was also the main reason why the League of Nations failed to come to be for the United States. I'll be considering Wilson's strong-willed personality as he is unwilling to divvy up responsibility for the advocation of the League to Senate Minority Leader Hitchcock and his Vice President Marshall, as Wilson saw this as a moral imperative for the United States that he had to take the initiative on, and his Vice President Marshall was more than willing to stay on the sidelines in this negotiation process. The bulk of my paper is going to be focusing on the time period of Wilson's return from the Paris Peace Conference in July through the first vote for ratification by the Senate on November 19th, 1919. My paper will delve into the meeting in the White House with the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and President Wilson, whereupon this time period, Wilson laid out what occurred in Paris to the chairman of the committee, Senator Henry Cabot Lodge, and answered questions from committee members dealing with the Shantung question, if the Monroe Doctrine was now superseded by the League, what route the United States could take if it wanted to lead the League in the future, and the key issue of Article 10, which many senators felt that this would force the United States into a position of having to defend the gains of Europe after World War I, and it would usurp the power of Congress to declare war, as the United States would be forced to defend a nation in Europe if it is being attacked. So, after this time period of Wilson meeting the senators at the White House, he was in a negotiation process with them regarding different amendments and reservations that they're willing to place upon the treaty. And these negotiations did not go well for Wilson. So therefore, he went on a westward tour in September where he took a train across the western half of the United States to take the treaty to the public and have them rile up support to go against the Republicans who opposed the treaty. While this trip is seen both as a positives and negatives for Wilson, as he gave some of his best speeches on the tour, he also gave some of his worst speeches of his presidency on the tour. During this time period, he had numerous health issues that culminated when he was in Colorado with a stroke, which abruptly ended his tour, and he was rushed back to Washington, D.C. A few days after his return, he suffered a major stroke that left him completely out of the negotiation process for the remaining of the time leading up to the first vote. During that time period, the only people that was allowed to see him and knew what was actually going on was his wife and his doctor. At this point in time, the mild reservationists who supported the League, but they wanted a few reservations placed on the treaty, they had no one to negotiate except with Lodge and other hard reservationists, and the Democrats were unable to really do anything regarding the reservations as they were afraid that they agreed to something that they could end up undercutting President Wilson. Also during this time period, Secretary of State Lansing gathered a cabinet meeting and discussed the possibility of having the Vice President Marshall taking the presidency, but Marshall was unwilling to do this as he felt he'd be usurping Wilson. So going through my sources for this research paper, Wilson's tour out west provides a boon for all of his speeches are public records, so I am able to access them. And also during this time period, Senator Henry Cabot Lodge wrote a memoir a few years after these events detailing his experiences during this time period, along with he kept his correspondence with various figures such as former President William Howard Taft and the leader of the Republican Party at the time, Hayes, and they discussed the creation of different amendments that they wanted on the treaty and of the various reservations that he added to the treaty. So In conclusion, how does this apply to our class of continuity and change? Well, on the change front, we have that the United States is more willing to be part of an international body. With even Senator Lodge, he is in favor of having a League of Nations. He just wants it not having the capability of usurping Congress's power. And Wilson, of course, is in favor of it. So it's just this shows that the United States is now in a position of wanting to be more internationally involved with a government organization now that creates a place for nations to air their grievances. At the same time, there is continuity here because the ideology behind Wilson is found in previous presidents. Wilson believes that democracy is the way of the future, that it has overtaken and won against the autocracies of the world, and that the United States is the beacon for the world, that it is the nation that others will look towards for the future, which many previous presidents viewed the same. And in addition to it, both Wilson and the Senate Republicans believed that the Monroe Doctrine reigned supreme for the Western Hemisphere. Wilson believed that the League would not undercut this and that United States policy would remain the same. And this concludes my presentation. Thank you very much for listening. Have a good rest of your day.